All right, welcome back to another episode of Triple Overtime. As always, it is me, Austin Snyder, with Amaar Burton, Dillon Holloway. It's been a couple weeks, right, guys? I mean, how you guys doing? Are you excited to be back? Excited to be doing another episode? I know we have a ton of juicy content to work with. We're gonna be dealing with some draft, some quotes, a little bit of how well we did, our own draft grades for ourselves, and how well we did prediction wise and everything. But what's been going on, guys?
The band is back together. I mean, I've been drowning in finals. I just watched your guys' episode. You just did. Whoever that editor is needs to be fired because that guy was way late on posting the new episode. So I apologize on that. But I mean, finals have taken precedent. A lot of projects that have been just ruining my life, as people who are in college or have been in college know. So I'm glad that we're all three back together, though, and I'm ready to rock and roll. What about you, Amar?
Applying for houses, like how for housing.
What an adult.
It's so adult. It's just, but like when one comes up, it's like you have to fill out the application right now, and so it's like you have to drop everything you're doing, like even if it's like mid work day, and like just go put the kids somewhere and fill out this application, and like it just throws your whole flow off. But I also got this shot in my arm today, first of two. So I got that going.
What's your brand? What brand you go with?
We went with the Pfizer brand.
Oh, okay, that's is that the best one? I don't know how are we ranking these?
It was the one at the place that's closest to us. So.
I think it's pronounced Moderna. Is that right? Am I pronouncing that right?
And then
Moderna?
Moderna, yeah, that's the one I got.
Okay.
So that's basically just because that's the only thing. Like the scheduling here is insane in New Jersey. It's so hard to get. It's like getting into the VIP section of the club here, essentially. You know what I mean?
Super easy here. Like it was. I mean, I went on the thing like last night, and it was just like, you want to go tomorrow? What time? Like just hella easy. Like they said you could just walk up.
Wow, walk-in status.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, especially over here too. I haven't gotten mine yet, but I figure I'll probably do it while I'm at work tomorrow because I've got a Walgreens right next door, so I'll just pop over real quick. And
Austin's just in the middle of selling a car while getting a shot in his arm.
right.
How can I put you in this GMC today, sir?
So apparently, when I'm done with this, it's like I can do anything now. I can go to Disneyland. I can go to games. I can just do whatever I want to do, and have my little certification and be like,
I think it also makes you taller too, so we should all be able to dunk after this.
Absolutely,
okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I already have a tryout set up with the Lakers actually to play point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
bronze shadow. So
on 2K or like for real.
Well, yeah, after I get my shot, yeah. So
okay.
I think Saturday is when I'm going to be trying out.
I don't think
you
I'm going to be the saving grace from those playing games.
I don't think you're taking you're not taking KCP's spot.
Oh no, never. I'm going to take up the Caruso spot. They needed a short white guy with hair instead. So
there was just like a limit. It's
like how you say,
we only got room for one. So
yeah.
How tall is Caruso?
Yeah, I think he's like 6 foot
or something.
Is he 6'3"?
Yeah, he's not like little.
Well, short to NBA stature.
We always assume, like I see people calling Steph Curry on commentary like the little guy. The dude's 6'3". Like he's not short.
Like he's not like Muggsy Bogues. He's just
Well, I think it's because with basketball players, they don't typically carry a heavy frame. Like that's why when LeBron
Caruso is 6'5", by the way.
Jesus, really?
So Austin thinks he's the same height as Alex Caruso. He's literally like almost a foot taller. He's like, yeah, I could. Austin's sitting at home, like drinking a beer on his couch. Like, yeah, I could probably do that. See Caruso dunk on people.
That guy's in tremendous shape too. I could never do what Alex Caruso does. That guy's ridiculously ripped. He looks like an old ripped PE teacher. That's what he looks like. So good for him. All right, guys. So let's get into it. It sounds like we're going to be starting with a little NFL draft recap.
Yeah,
Dylan, why don't you take it away?
Let's talk about the NFL draft, guys. I mean, I watched the entire first round. I kind of had the 2nd through 7th rounds on, paying attention while I'm doing homework, kind of thing. Is there one team that stood out? I'll go with you first, Amaar. Who's the one team that you think had the best collective draft out of everybody? And it doesn't even have to be like, the obvious one was like Trevor Lawrence, but someone who just improved their team. Maybe not necessarily like a Super Bowl contender now, but really improved themselves.
Biased as it may sound, I'd say.
Oh, here we go.
I'd say the Cleveland Browns, right?
Whoa! Hot take.
But they really did. But they really did have a good draft. Like
they did.
The first round, they got late first round, which me and Austin talked about in our last episode. A rare spot for the Browns to be picking that late. They got a cornerback to bolster a secondary. That the thing, like, they didn't have like these glaring weaknesses, but some areas were like, okay, they could improve their depth there. They could maybe get a starter there. They got a good corner in Newsome in the first round. Second round, they got the linebacker out of Notre Dame, which a lot of people projected them to take in the first round. So, anytime you get a first round talent with the, what was it, the 52nd pick or something, that's a good value there. That fills a spot that they needed. Third round, they got the fastest guy in the draft, which was Anthony Schwartz, the receiver out of Auburn. I just watching the tape on him, like some guys, they pop off of that film, and just in his highlights, I was just like, yo, that dude, like, he's a burner. Like, he's got like track speed, right? I don't know if he can run routes. I don't know if he can catch, but he's fast as hell. So, that's cool.
It's going to be that guy on the replacements who's really fast but can't catch anything, remember? Where he's like trying to catch a kid who's robbing the Quickie Mart or whatever, and he like slips on the Twinkie because he hits him in the face.
So, they got some more speed on offense, some help on defense. And, those are the kind of players that, maybe that, they can go one more round in the playoffs with that. So, that's my pick.
As being our resident Browns expert, what would you say was the Browns' biggest need going into that draft? And did they address it initially?
I'd say linebacker was probably the biggest, which is why a lot of people have them taking. They just call him JOK now, taking JOK in the first round. Getting like a coverage linebacker, and that they got that in the second. So yeah, linebacker was probably the biggest need. You could have said secondary was the second biggest, and they got those with their first 2 picks. So, it's like they got what they needed to get. They got some good talent. They got about, at least one very good value pick. So I think just a really solid draft for them. Yeah. And
Austin,
they got
whose draft did you like?
I remember, but
Austin, whose draft did you like?
the Seahawks.
So I actually really like what I did like what the
Of
Seahawks,
course you did.
I did, but they weren't they weren't my favorite.
The
draft.
Seahawks could have drafted me, and Austin would have thought it was the greatest move in the history of football.
Great, absolutely. No, but more so than anybody else whose draft I really liked and whose draft I think really gives them the opportunity to totally turn the tide for their season. Despite one more move that I think is still in the works for this team, would be the Atlanta Falcons. I think they did really well. Amaar and I kind of talked about this last week, and with the possibility, because last week or 2 weeks ago, when we shot it, the big conversation was that 5 quarterbacks are going to come off the board, boom, 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 like that. And then Amaar mentioned that there was a lot of talk surrounding Kyle Pitts. And we had kind of talked about, hey, taking a tight end that early. I mean, number 4 overall, that's huge. But I mean, just the more and more I dig into this guy, and I'll admit I probably should have dug in a little sooner. The guy is just incredible. He's an absolute dynamic playmaker, which is going to be an instant impact for that offense. It's going to put him in immediate position to put up some huge numbers. And Matt Ryan he's got to be thrilled with that selection. But on top of that, They got a guy in Richie Grant who's going to step into that safety role and be a contributor big time right out of the gate. And they desperately needed help on defense, and especially in the secondary. So he's a guy, he's a big time playmaker who can move sideline to sideline. And he hits. He's got good instincts and hits well. That'd be Richie Grant, if I hadn't mentioned that. And then they got Jalen Mayfield in the third round, who really was projected by a lot to be an early second round pick at the offensive tackle position. So they're getting some protection there. So that's three guys just right off of the bat that I think that are immediate contributors and that can step in and make this team immediately better in three of the absolute largest areas of need. And Kyle Pitts is going to fill that area of need that I think Julio Jones is going to leave. I think he's gone. I don't feel like he's going to make this game day roster. I think that they trade him at some point. If not, then by the trade deadline, I think he's gone. So I think we're going to see Kyle Pitts lined up all over the place and not just at tight end.
Yeah, I thought it seemed kind of obvious that the Falcons were going to take Pitts. And like, I get Kyle Pitts, like he had so much hype coming into this draft, right? Like Amaar and I were talking about it. Like we can't think of a tight end that's had this much draft hype besides maybe like Kellen Winslow II.
Yeah.
You talk about like what are some other ones like Rob Gronkowski didn't have as much because he had those back surgeries at Arizona. Right. You know what I mean? So like there's never been a tight end with like this high of a draft selection. And like I get that he's like a lot of people say he's like the best player on the board. I just don't know that was the Falcons' like biggest need. But if you think he's going to be like the greatest player of this draft, I see why you take him because it's like you can't pass up on this guy. But it's not like they are terrible at the tight end position. They just signed a guy last year. Yeah. It's not like they don't have, and it's not like they don't have playmakers. What they really need is like offensive line and defense, I think. But if they didn't like someone better than they liked Kyle Pitts, you take Kyle Pitts, and I get that. But I just don't know if like, they got a tight end and now the Falcons are going to challenge for a playoff spot. You know what I mean? It's like tight end isn't as impactful as other positions.
So he's not just going to be a tight end, though. I guarantee you that. This is a guy that can line up wide. They can put him in a lot of different sets. He's overall just going to be an incredible playmaker for the offense in every position.
Yeah, but this is a team that wasn't lacking in playmakers is what I'm getting at. I'm not saying he's going to only catch like 3 balls a game.
I would agree, but the problem is for the offense that they're currently running to work, they needed Hayden Hurst to actually step up and be a playmaker, and he's not. And so we saw what happened to that team last year because of it. And at that point, when did this was the first draft and how long we didn't see like a edge rusher taken off the board in the first 10 picks, right?
Right. Pretty surprising. Correctly? Yeah. So it feels weird. It feels like edge rusher is always like the premier position in every draft.
5 pick, almost guaranteed every draft. So obviously not a lot of people are high on defensive, at least edge rushers early in the draft. So at that point, there's 2 ways a team's going to pick. What's my area of need, right? Which isn't as often considered as most fans or people would think that it is, right? It's not. It's typically an afterthought. But the number one is, hey, who is my absolute best graded player that's available on the draft right now? That's how you see things. And especially as Seahawks fans, we see it every year where they're making picks and you're like, what the heck? James Carpenter when he was taken in the first round. A lot of people were shaking their head on Tyler Lockett when he was originally drafted because they wanted offensive line help and everything else. So, I mean, we're used to seeing those kind of picks, but 9 times out of 10, it's because Pete and John say, okay, well, that's the best graded player that we believe, so.
First off, we can't compare what Seahawks Twitter complains about to like actual draft analysis. They say offensive line for everything.
Right.
When the Seahawks took a receiver this year, they were screaming offensive line. When they took an offensive lineman, they're still screaming offensive line.
Which I thought was an incredible pick. I thought it was a great pick. I don't understand how people.
The Seahawks offensive line is so much more improved than it was 2-3 years ago.
This was
across the board. It's ridiculous.
Offensive line. This last season was the best offensive line Russell Wilson has ever stood behind in his entire career. The absolute best. It ranked 15th in the league. which is
And
huge compared.
And he fully agrees with you and would never complain about their play.
Oh,
Moving on.
The thing with that is that, like
But
you
they
said,
got better.
but you said it's the best line he's ever stood behind, but people don't see him stand behind it. They always see him running. And so the perception is this line's awful because he's always
Right.
running. So
But they took, my
want
point
to
is they
get
took that line and they got better. They added to it. Like, it did not get worse in any way, shape, or form. And especially with that Stone Forsythe pick, which to me, and I will totally take the homer card with me on this, that is easily one of the absolute best value picks in the entire draft. Out of every single team, every single pick, that Stone Forsythe pick was an incredible draft pick. Absolutely.
See, we got him to homer about the Seahawks after all, Amaar. He tried to start with the Falcons. We
Yeah.
brought him right back, though. We got him talking about that Seahawks team.
Most people don't like really understand offensive line play. My brother-in-law, he's a huge Browns fan. Like, he played O-line in high school, and he's like, he'll talk to you for like an hour about, why the left guard is awesome, even, and why the right tackle's dope and all that kind of stuff. But most people don't get that. And so they just look at simple stuff like Russell Wilson's always running. The line must suck. So you need to draft a lineman in the first round. That's how simple the thought process.
And you know how hard it is to block for a guy like that that's constantly running and moving. Those
they ain't built
like that.
Russell running as much as he does isn't necessarily because the line sucks.
And he holds the ball quite a bit. Like, he holds the ball longer than anyone except for Deshaun Jackson. So there you go. I mean, the other thing is like, what's that?
Lamar Jackson?
Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me. Deshaun Watson. I merged two quarterbacks there. Deshaun Watson. Okay. No, the other thing is like
create a washed up wide receiver.
Yikes. The other thing is horrible, dude. The other thing is like a lot of casual fans don't actually pay attention to like the moves that a team like Seattle makes for the offensive line. They assume that just because like they aren't getting guys in the Hall of Fame every year that they're not improving the offensive line. Like, everyone thinks that like Posick is garbage and like should get out of there. The dude was he's only 25 years old and he was a second rounder. Right. It's a second round pick investment at the center position.
Yeah.
They act like they never address the offensive line. Right. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
And like to the point of like, anytime you see Seattle make any kind of move, like if they sign like a backup long snapper off the practice squad, they're like, why not offensive line?
Right.
Like, everybody's just freaking out about it. Like,
they traded a first-round draft pick for an all-pro left tackle. This year, they traded a third-round draft pick for an all-pro right guard. I mean, like, what do we even? It's crazy to me that this is still a narrative.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Because these two names came up, Tyler Lockett and Deshaun Jackson, do you think that too much was made about Devontae Smith's size and him not being big enough? Seeing as we've seen, like, these small receivers have success. So, like, was that an overrated criticism of him?
Not to play in the league, but I think maybe to be like your number one receiver, possibly. If that makes any sense. Like, he's not too small to play in the league, obviously, but like, he will have an impact. But I don't know, like, you want that like receiver that can make the tough catches over the middle and take the hits and jump up in the red zone and stuff like that. And he is small. Like, it's it's not a slight on him. He is small. Like,
but there are small guys who are their team's best receiver. I mean, they might they don't play the same way that Julio Jones plays, but Tyler Lockett is the Seahawks' best receiver. Well, he was the Seahawks' best receiver.
What's the weight difference between Tyler?
I was just gonna say, I think Tyler Lockett's like close to 200 pounds.
Yeah. So the guy is pretty small. I think he's like 166 pounds.
Lockett's 182.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got like, Deshaun Jackson and like other like smaller, and granted they're always fast, smaller guys. Even if, like, I don't know, like Edelman and, guys that are like, they're not, Julio Jones size. They're not DK Metcalf size. But they can still be the top target on the team, or a playmaker. And so it just seems.
And I think it depends on where you're like
made about. Devontae Smith like shouldn't get picked that high because he's so little.
it's also depending on like top target. It's like that's situational too. Like when you get into the red zone on a jump ball situation, you're not going to look for Tyler Lockett first. You're definitely going to look for DK Metcalf, right?
Yeah.
So like, it all depends on the offense they're running too. I don't know exactly what kind of offense Philadelphia plans on running. They have a brand new coach, which, a lot of people are criticizing this guy already based on a press conference, but we don't know what kind of offense they want to run. Are they going to do a spread? Are they going to do something like that? Then, he could have a great success. But if it's a traditional pro style offense, he might get lost in the red zone a little bit, or he might get bullied in the red zone a little bit. That's the other thing. It's like, he will have to put on some weight.
And I don't think he's asked to block.
I don't think he's not going to like have success, but I don't think it was underrated to talk about his size in terms of weight. So I don't think that was an overblown thing. 166 pounds, man. That's pretty small for the NFL. Like Austin said, blocking. Can you imagine this guy trying to block a linebacker on an outside sweep? He's going to get flattened. Like,
I think. Well, so
is he going to block Bobby Wagner on an outside sweep?
Oh no.
Well, I'm seeing here he was like 175, which isn't too far off the block. So either way,
maybe he gained weight. I thought he was 166. Maybe he gained some weight in the offseason. I thought he was 166.
And he will put on some weight. I mean, I think, between, your rookie year and year two, most guys are going to put on some weight, and as long as it doesn't like impact the stuff that makes him great. I think he can still.
What pick did he go? He still went first round, didn't he?
Yeah.
16, right?
No, it was like 10.
Was it?
Yeah, because the Eagles traded up to get him.
Yeah. So, I mean,
right.
It's not like he like fell to the fourth round or something.
No, it didn't actually like impact the status. It was just going into the draft. There was just a lot of talk of like, well, they should pick, this receiver first or this receiver, before him. And the size was the thing it was used against Smith a lot. It just seemed to me like,
I get that, but that happens every draft with like every player at every position. It seems like it's almost like we don't want to talk about what they do well. It's what we want to talk about, like how they could improve or what they do wrong. Right. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this guy's not tall enough. This guy's not big enough. This guy didn't shake my hand correctly backstage. You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Like I think the Browns drafted, 6 players, and I read all of the evaluations for all of them after. 3 to 4 of them, it said they had short arms. And they're like,
that's like a huge thing now in the NFL.
Like,
short arms.
Yeah, like why is that such a thing? And now I'm like, well, how much of a difference are we talking? Is it like an inch? From like what's considered like.
Oh yeah, and quarterbacks is always the hand size.
Like
if a guy doesn't have 10-inch hands, get him out of here.
Oh yeah, people freak out about the fact that Russell Wilson's hands are so gigantic.
Yeah, but anyway, so my favorite draft, real quick before we move on, I really liked what the Detroit Lions did. I like that they stayed patient. They went on the best player on the board, Sewell, the offensive lineman out of Oregon, who a lot of people think is like the guarantee lock for a Hall of Famer out of this draft. They could have drafted a quarterback very easily and like jumped the gun and be like, we don't want Jared Goff to start. We'll get, Justin Fields, whomever was available. And they really stayed patient. I like that. And I think they got a lot of good kneecap biters to play under Dan Campbell. And it seemed like they're building the team the right way is what I'm getting at. Because you see a lot of teams are impatient with this kind of thing. And they're like, oh, quarterback's available, take the quarterback. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm not under the belief that just because the quarterback is available, you should automatically just take the quarterback. Like, he has to be the right quarterback for you. You know what I mean?
It's got to be the right situation. Otherwise, it's for naught, because a quarterback isn't going to be successful without the good, solid foundation of an offensive line and a stout defense and weapons to give him to throw to and a run game to control the clock. I mean, it doesn't matter who you pick. If you don't have those things in place, it's never going to work.
Which is why everyone killed the Bengals for not taking Penei Sewell.
Right.
Especially me. I was railing on the Bengals, man. They're gonna get Burrow killed back there.
Right.
And it's not like they didn't have any wide receivers. I understand like Chase is like a generational talent. I feel like they say about every receiver now. Like every receiver in the first round is generational talent. It's like, are all these guys going in the Hall of Fame?
Of course.
But anyways, I mean, it's like you got to take an offensive lineman. I feel like that was the most obvious move in the entire draft, aside from Trevor Lawrence going number one.
Star rookie quarterback.
They literally did a presser.
Blew out.
They did a
last year.
presser, dude. They did a presser with the Bengals, like some of their young stars, and there's Joe Burrow standing there, and you can see this huge scar on his knee from the surgeries they did from the multiple tears. And they're gonna look at that and go, maybe another receiver. I don't know what you think. The only way it'd have been stupider is if they picked defense or something. I mean, and they got an offensive lineman. And I know they addressed it later, but you had a chance to get like one of the premier guys in the draft to protect your young investment of quarterback. And I thought it was just a dumb move.
I mean, yeah, because Chase can be open as much as he wants, but if Burrow can't see him because he's on his back, then
yeah. And I saw like on the herd, Colin Cowherd and Joy Taylor were like, "Oh, it's because Burrow loves to throw deep." I'm like, in order to throw deep, you need time in the pocket. Yeah. You can't. He's not going to start at the end zone. He's going to start where you're starting.
We still don't even know what kind of athleticism Burrow's going to come back with either. You know what I mean? It's not like he was a super duper mobile, scrambling quarterback, type of, he was a pocket passer who could move. He's just a young athletic guy, like most quarterbacks that age. Right. But with as bad as gruesome as that injury was, I mean, we don't know how he's going to come back. I believe that he's a smart enough player and he'll find a way to still be successful or be able to throw the ball right and get it where it needs to go, etc. But again, if he doesn't have the protection, then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter at all. So yeah, that made no sense to me either.
Anyways, moving on. Let's talk a little bit of NBA here real quick. So Scott Brooks recently said that he thinks Russell Westbrook is the second greatest point guard of all time. Now, I just want to get your guys' reaction when you hear that right away. Austin, how do you react when you hear Russell Westbrook's second greatest point guard in the history of the National Basketball Association? Just give me a real quick reaction.
He just walked off.
He might be in the restroom, ladies and gentlemen. Amaar, what
crazy to me.
Amaar, what did you think? What did you think, Amaar, when you saw that?
I was like, who said that? Oh, his coach. Okay, whatever. Like, I like, you're gonna hype up your guy. You're up close to him, so you're seeing what he's doing every day, from the sideline, as opposed to you didn't watch, Isaiah Thomas play that up close or whatever. So I understand him wanting to hype up Russell, but it's kind of like, okay, chill. And he has the stats, and he's an amazing talent. It's one of those, like, if you want to talk about who are the most talented point guards of all time, you have an argument there. Russell Westbrook's like incredibly talented. But just like the success on the resume isn't there, I think, to justify that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's got the stats, he has the athleticism, he has the talent, but like he's got to win more to get that, to put him above, Isaiah and, even Stockton or Kidd or, like
Magic Johnson.
Right.
Well, I'm assuming I assume everyone has Magic number one.
I would hope.
Yeah. So yeah,
I don't know. Some people like John Stockton just because he's got the more long-term numbers. Some people like Magic Johnson because he brought the flair. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's two different players.
I assume Scott Brooks had Magic number one. He's saying Russell's number two, but yeah, maybe. Yeah,
I don't know. He's got Russ number two. Maybe he's got someone else number one, dude, that we don't even know about.
Like Steve Francis is number one, or
right?
You got like Allen Iverson number one, Russell Westbrook's number two, and John Morant's number three. I don't know.
The thing that I think this and I know I get what you're saying, it's Scott Brooks and everything, but I see other people talking about Russell Westbrook being like one of the greatest players ever too because of his numbers. And I think too many, and I'm not going to pick on the younger fans, but I think especially younger viewers of basketball value high numbers over winning too much today. And not just like, and I'm not saying like, oh, he doesn't have a ring, so he sucks or anything like that. But I mean, even like leading your team deep into the playoffs, kind of winning. You know what I mean? Like Steve Nash, like he didn't make the finals, but he made his team better and they won. With they had Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion, but like Russell Westbrook had like Kevin Durant and James Harden on the same team at one point. He had PG-13 with him. You know what I mean?
Well, look, like, if you want to look at the direct opposite of that, look at Chris Paul. There isn't a team that guy hasn't gone to that, and he's never won a ring. But every single team he's gone to, they've gotten noticeably and substantially better, not just in the overall rankings by the end of the regular season, or when it comes to deep, like conference championship runs or second round runs or whatever. He's never an easy out in the playoffs. Unfortunately, he's just never been able to get to the promised land. So,
And the Wizards right now are 30 and 36 and in the 10th spot.
right.
They're very close. They're 3 games away from the Raptors of not even being in the play-in tournament. And this guy is like the second greatest point guard. I don't care if he scores 100 rebounds and 1,000 assists a game. If they constantly lose, like, what does it matter, right? Does it matter?
And I try not to hold it against him too much. Like, my favorite player of all time is Tracy McGrady. Obviously, he doesn't have a ring. He has all those first-round exits. And as great as I think T-Mac is and as talented as he is, it's like, there's just certain guys I can't rank him above as much as I want to because he just doesn't have the winning on the resume. And, you can say, he didn't have the right teammates and, because T-Mac had some terrible teams in Orlando. You can bring that up and say, it wasn't totally his fault that he didn't win more, but some of it's his fault, kind of like Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, I mean, as great as he is, like, those 6 finals losses are always going to be there. And some of those are his fault. You can't just, you can't ignore that, act like that didn't happen. Right. So,
right.
Westbrook, like I got, if you put him in your top 10, no problem with that. Just 2 is like, that's high.
2 is absurd. And I wonder, so the other thing we kind of talked about this off air a little bit is when you're determining point guards today, there's so many like hybrid players and so many players who seem to play like out of position. You got LeBron, who's a small forward who plays like a point guard. Steph Curry is a point guard who plays like a shooting guard, right? Like, are you counting those players? Like, are you counting Steph Curry and Allen Iverson in that point guard discussion when you're talking about the top 10 that includes Russell Westbrook, or are we doing pure point guard, like passing players? Because Russell Westbrook, he's not the worst shooter in the world, but I don't think anyone thinks he's a lights out shooter necessarily, right?
I mean, I include Curry as a point guard just because, he's listed as a point guard and, Draymond Green facilitates a lot of that offense, but Curry will, he'll still bring the ball up, a lot of times. I mean, he'll guard the other team's point guard. So he's a point guard to me. Iverson, I've always kind of had as a 2 guard. Trying to think of like some other kind of, like James Harden played point guard, like was listed as point guard in Houston for many of the years he was there. So,
and Kyrie Irving too. Like, would they both be point guards?
Like, yeah, I would consider Kyrie a point guard. Harden's a 2. So yeah, Westbrook, I have him as a point guard. That's the position he's been listed at. That's pretty much the position he's played. He's been, the team's primary playmaker.
And he is a big assist guy,
Yeah. He's leading the league in assists right now. I think he's led the league in assists before. Sometimes he has like that 2 guard mentality with the way he attacks, but I think he's still a point. I think it's more what you're listed as with basketball fans, like Tim Duncan. Everyone calls him the greatest power forward of all time, but I mean, Greg Popovich even said like he plays center. He's been playing center for 15 years, but he was listed as power forward. So people.
Why is that with the Tim Duncan thing? I never understood the Tim Duncan thing.
I say that's where they had him. When he came, which is weird because he was a center in college.
Why don't they just call him a center then?
Yeah.
Like what?
I think because when he came in, David Robinson was already there, and David Robinson was the center, and so Tim was the power forward. And even after Robinson left, and Duncan was, as Pop said, like Duncan's our center. He was still listed as power forward on all of the, the All-Star ballots and, just on the lineup sheet. And so that just became, he's a power forward.
No, bro. It was because he couldn't beat out Thiago Splitter later on in his career.
That was it. That was the only reason why.
No, moving on a little bit more here. Let's keep it on the NBA. Let's talk about the play-in games. Are you guys excited for this little mini? Do you think this adds more to this season, or do you think it takes away? Are you like LeBron James and you think whoever came up with this idea should get fired, or do you think this is going to be exciting?
I think they're trying to catch that NCAA tournament feel, the kind of that one and done tourney feel. Major League Baseball is they've move to that model, and I think it's worked for them for baseball. It seems like fans are pretty into it. It's pretty exciting. It's always going to be a case where if you are the favorite team and you're in a position to lose a title shot based on one game, then you're gonna hate it. But if you're the underdog team,
Right.
that like, oh, we've got a shot to get into the playoffs if we win this one game, you're gonna love that model. So, when I hear LeBron say he doesn't like it, I'm pretty sure, Russell Westbrook's gonna love it because it's like, okay, cool, like we got a shot to get in. We just got to win this one game, just like NCAA tournament. I mean, the guys at Kansas, if you could have it be a best of 3 series, they'd be like, well, cool, because we'll win that. But that 15-16 seed, they like the one and done model because it's like, we just got to win this one game and anything can happen in this one game. And we might not be overall the better team, but we can still kind of sneak in there. So maybe it's because there's hasn't been fans the last year and this year, and so it's just not going to be as exciting as the baseball version has been. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think it's like the worst idea in the world, but I don't know. What do you think?
You don't think the guy should be fired?
Nah. I mean,
I think he absolutely should be losing his job right now. Pack a goddamn box. No, I think it's great. I think it's an incredible injection of fun and excitement to a sport that, though is fun and exciting, has become a bit stale when it comes to the regular season, especially with the constant narratives that, prior to COVID, obviously, around the load management and the whining and crying about, the regular season not mattering and whatever. So I think it's an incredible way to just really ramp up the excitement. And I think that, if you're the favorite team that's supposed to win and then you lose, then you get embarrassed. Yeah, then you get upset and you don't think people should, people should be losing their jobs over these decisions. But, when it doesn't matter and you're sitting in one of the first 3 seeds or whatever, and you're just coasting into the playoffs at that point, then it's a great idea, right? What a hypocrite. I love LeBron James, but man, I gotta call him out when I can in that regard, because that's so ridiculous. Come on, buddy, you can't be that blatantly hypocritical of yourself just a year later, right? Like, you can't totally just go back on your word just because your team obviously is in that position or potentially in that position.
One game above the Blazers. The Lakers are in the 6th spot. The Blazers are
I think
in the
it's
7th
half
spot.
a game, isn't it? Isn't it a half a game?
I mean, technically the Lakers have one less loss, so I don't know how many, if it's a half a game difference. But so seeds 7 through 10 would be in the play-in. So right now it's the Blazers, Grizzlies, Warriors, and Spurs in the West, and the Lakers are just on the outside of that. And Austin, I tend to agree with you. I think the play-in thing is kind of cool. I think it's interesting, and I don't think it's wrong of LeBron to not like it. He can not like it, but I think it's a bit far for him to be like, you should fire the person who came up with it. I don't know. I read the quote. I don't know. I didn't watch him say it. I don't know if he said it like tongue in cheek or anything like that. But if he was serious, I think it's a bit much because of the influence LeBron has and the power he has in the league. Like, can you imagine if this was like one of y'all's brainchild and like everybody loved it at first, and then like the most powerful player in sports was like, whoever came up with this should be fired and not be able to provide for their family because I don't want to be in the play-in tournament.
Right.
I'd be a little taken aback. I'd be kind of worried too. You know what I mean? Maybe you're getting a call from Adam Silver who's like, hey, just talk to LeBron. Things aren't looking good for you getting your contract renewed there, Amaar. I know you had real aspirations on these different tournaments, but we're gonna have to go ahead and go in another direction.
You're like, wait. What does Mike say though? Does Jordan like it? Because
Amaar, it's over. Goodbye.
Kevin Durant said he likes it. Damn it.
Yeah, as far as the East, because we're not going to ignore the East here. We got the East, 7 through 10. You got the Heat, Hornets, Pacers, and Wizards. Hornets are hanging on there, man. I thought they'd be out of the playoff position by now, but the East is just—they're all kind of like clumped together there. You got like once you get to like 13 through 15, the Magic, Cavaliers, and Pistons are just so bad. They're like, I think they're officially eliminated from playoff contention. I don't know if the Bulls and Raptors are technically yet. We got like 6-7 games left or something like that. Amaar, is that what we said?
Yeah.
Something like that. So they could still, I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't look like it. So you never know what could happen. The Heat Celtics have like the exact same record, but like the Celtics are one above the Heat. I don't know why. I don't know if that's based on like common wins or head to head or whatever, but it'll be interesting to see. Do you guys know when the playoff playing thing is scheduled? Is that right after the regular season ends, or how does that work?
I think what they did last year was, I mean, yeah, it was like, the next day, or there was like a day break. I remember because, but that time it wasn't 7 through 10. It was just like I think 8 and 9 played,
right?
And it was kind of one of those like, if the 9 seed won the first game, then they would play again. Like the 9 seed had to beat them twice, but the 8 seed just had to win once. I remember Portland and Memphis played in the West. In Portland, they just took care of business in the first game, and they earned their 8.
I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a wild card game in the NFL or something like that.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think we always kind of were curious what would happen if like you had NBA playoffs with one game.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of NCAA tournament type stakes. Anything could happen. So and the
heard
other thing is like if LeBron and the Lakers don't like it, then like I know LeBron has been hurt. And but like play better to not be in the play-in tournament. You know what I mean? Like, they still have a whole other basketball team. Like the Lakers aren't trash beyond LeBron James. So, just don't be in the play-in tournament if you think it's stupid.
Like, okay, like AD got hurt, LeBron got hurt. Like we can still kind of just tread water enough and just kind of stay afloat. And then it was kind of like, oh crap, we might have to be in the play-in tournament. And then it became a problem.
Well, the West is pretty decent.
Yeah. Well, like LeBron's first year in LA, they would have been in it because I think they finished like 10th, right?
Something like that. Yeah. You think he would have said the dude should have been fired?
Well, yeah. I wonder, like that year would he have been like, "Oh, cool, we have another shot." Now, I think that because
this guy should get a promotion. Like,
I think they kind of shut him down like towards the end of the season when it was like, okay, we're not going to get the 8 seed, so they just kind of gave up on it. And that team wouldn't have gone far anyway. Like, I think with
yeah. I mean, having Anthony Davis does help, believe it or not.
Right.
I know it's one of those things where like any superstar that goes with LeBron somehow, like it feels to me like Kevin Love was like in Minnesota. They're like, this guy's a double machine, and then he goes to the Cavaliers. They're like, oh, he's all right. I mean, it's mainly LeBron though. Like like Kyrie's really good. They're like, yeah, I know, but like LeBron took him under his wing. And like,
it depends on who you ask, because if you ask, the Skip Bayless cult, they're going to be like, Kevin Love and Kyrie are carrying LeBron, and they're like amazing, and he's
right. But I mean, like the Skip.
So yeah, it depends on.
I love Skip Bayless, but like, are we really taking him serious in terms of like his opinion on LeBron anymore? It's kind of like you have Skip. It's like you have like this, like I picture it like being like a line here, right? You have like Skip Bayless on the one side, and then Nick Wright on the other side of the two extremes.
Right.
LeBron can't do anything. LeBron does everything. Right. Like, and my favorite thing about these two kind of sports commentators, it's like a new thing now, is like not only do they hardcore like pull for their guy and then bash the guy they don't like, but then like anybody who's within the realm of challenging their guy, they also bash that guy. Yeah. Like Nick Wright is always crapping all over the Nets. He's always crapping all over Tom Brady because he loves Patrick Mahomes and LeBron James. So the Nets had like a bad game against the Bucks, and just every tweet from Nick Wright is just, oh, they're terrible. They're trash. They can't guard anybody. They suck. They're so terrible. You know what I mean? It's like
you can predict, like, when someone comes out that strong one way or another on one of these polarizing players like LeBron, you can tell who else they like and who else they hate, because the narrative always kind of circles around LeBron, right? So if someone hates LeBron, guarantee you they love Kyrie, they love Kevin Love, they love D-Wade, they love all of his good teammates. They hate anyone who's kind of like pro LeBron. Even go back in history, like they don't like, they like certain players that kind of that you can use to kind of challenge his legacy. Um, and yeah, it's like because that's the kind of he's like the focal point of everything, and then all of their basketball opinions like spring from that. And yeah, Skip's the extreme, Nick Wright's the other one, but they have followers, man. They have like disciples, and so
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not
I mean, it
just
seems to be
he's got
working. They're
little, like,
popular on TV, and like I said, I love Skip Bayless, and I like watching Nick Wright. But sometimes I'm just like, all right, your guys' shtick is like so transparent
they got,
right
like,
now.
they convince
Right.
people. They got like minions out here who pretty much mimic their arguments, like all over social media. So yeah.
Yeah, it's some of the stats they come up with to like angle their narrative make me laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It was like I saw one from Nick Wright. It was I might be getting this. It was something like Tom Brady's lost more Super Bowls than he's beaten Patrick Mahomes or something like that. I'm like, what? Like, it was something that it might not have been exactly that, but it was something along those lines where I literally had like, the meme of like the dude from The Hangover where he's got all the numbers in front of him.
Yeah.
That was me like staring at Twitter, like I'm trying to comprehend what this even means right now. Like,
well, and you can take like any stat that seems positive for one guy and flip into like a negative. It's like,
Right.
okay, LeBron's got the highest Game 7 scoring average. Well, but that's because
Why is he even getting to Game 7?
Well, yeah. Why was he even getting to Game 7? And like, well, this is because he's padding stats and like, yeah, like, or you take any negative stat, and the Nick Wrights can turn it into like a positive. Like LeBron's got the most turnovers of all time. Well, he's got the ball 90% of the time, so he's gonna have like all those turnovers, and it's actually a good thing. And you think about it, he only turns it over this percentage of the time, but really, he's the most efficient ball handler of all time. Like, it's okay, he turns the ball over a lot. Like, we can own that. It's still
right. Yeah, and they're like, well, he turns over the ball because he has to do it himself because he doesn't trust his teammates who are terrible.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, his teammates like Anthony Davis.
Yeah. and Jameis Winston's over here like, why don't people make excuses when I turn the ball over? Like,
exactly, yeah.
I suck.
But moving on, let's bounce back to a little more NFL here. Not so much league wide, but we got to talk about Aaron Rodgers. And the people who are most excited about this Aaron Rodgers drama are Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks because it has completely overridden anything that Russell Wilson talked about in the offseason. Aaron Rodgers. And it's been confirmed by him that there's a rift, but I don't know it's been confirmed by him that like so many other stories are coming out reported by like Sports Illustrated, CBS Sports, different journalism companies, that stuff like if the GM's not fired, I'm not coming back to Green Bay. That he's furious of what they did in the draft this year, that he was furious about what they did in the draft last year, picking trading up in the first round to pick a quarterback, that he doesn't want to come back, that he's been mad at the team for a long time, that he might retire even is stuff I've read. Amaar, I want to get your thoughts on this first. What do you make of this? And do you think that the situation is like, do you think the bridge is burned down to the point of like he can't come back or he won't come back?
I just wish the Packers had a Hard Knocks sometime in the last few years because I'm like, where did this come from? Like, I wanted
How
to.
great would that be if they had to be
I
on
wanted
Hard
to like
Knocks
see
this year?
this coming, or like because to me it would just seem kind of out of nowhere. I mean, there was last year was like Rodgers is annoyed because they didn't draft a receiver or they didn't get a receiver, but it was just like all of a sudden just like he can't stand it here, he wants to be gone, like almost as to me like even harder to see coming than like the Deshaun Watson thing, because at least with the Texans like they were terrible and we saw some of the trades they made. And so
I was wondering which Deshaun Watson thing you were referring to.
So with Deshaun Watson,
clarification on that one.
So when Deshaun Watson was seemingly out of nowhere like I want to go, it was kind of like, well, I get that they suck, he doesn't want to be there, but like the Packers are good, and like it wasn't like, I don't know, like maybe I wasn't paying attention, but like I didn't hear all this like, Rodgers is pissed, he wants to go, like they need to do something, they need to fix this. It was just like he's out, he wants to be gone tomorrow. So because it was that sudden, I don't know, part of me is like, I feel like it's not gonna blow up that much and like he'll end up staying there. I don't think he's gonna retire. But it just seems.
You think it's like extreme, like maybe he said it when he was mad, or do you think that's maybe like somebody writing the story
I
trying
don't
to
even know if
jazz
he
it up a
even
little bit?
says
Or
that. Yeah, I don't see that happening.
it seems pretty extreme, doesn't it? Like I'll
Yeah,
just retire.
yeah, like he's not
Oh
gonna
yeah.
retire. Like he'll play.
That's like extreme level of
Play for
petty of
in,
like
yeah.
if they took away your team's racist mascot, you're just not going to name your team or something like that, right? Like you're just going to be the Washington football team forever.
Old cousin Dan over there.
Oh, cousin Dan Snyder.
Cousin Dan Snyder.
Austin, you got to get cousin Dan on the show, man.
Yeah,
like,
I'll try my best.
Yeah, dude. I
I'll try
like
my
text
best.
him tomorrow and be like, "Yo,
Yeah.
cousin Dan,
Come on,
yo
cousin
Dano, bang bang,
Come
finger
on,
pistols, come on the
cousin
show."
D.
If they were gonna announce their name of the team, you'd think they would do it before the draft, right? So you could, roll that out, with the draft hats and the jersey and everything.
Actually, he was saving it to unveil it on our show.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Okay,
so, and
Major
because we had to
announcement.
take draft week off, he's like, "That's cool. I'll push it back, brother. You're not a
Like,
problem."
okay, we've got a name.
Cool, cuzzo. But in terms of Aaron Rodgers, he'll never don a Green Bay Packers uniform again. I can promise you that. Like he's done, dude. He is out. He is done. Here's the thing. I have an inordinate amount of super duper Green Bay Packer fans on my Facebook page. And this writing has been on the wall for a long, long time. I mean, for at least the last five or six drafts, the Green Bay's Packers inability or at least not having the urgency to find as much help and protection and everything else for Aaron Rodgers has been something that Packers fans have raved, yelled, and screamed about for a long, long time. The fact that they don't go out and spend big money in free agency has been something that they've been upset about for a lot. The Packer fans know that they have a generational talent, Aaron Rodgers. The guy is incredible. He is a very, very talented quarterback. I think putting him in talks for like GOAT and stuff makes him way overrated. Personally, I think as like a human being, he's trash. But like as a quarterback, he's like incredible, right? So my point being is they know that and they understand that, and so this thing has been brewing. This is not just a 1 or 2 year woke up deciding thing. Even Brett Favre, news stories released today, Brett Favre being quoted as saying that he's been talking to Aaron Rodgers, feels like he knows him very, very well. They've always stayed in communication. Hey, I can promise you this: Brett Favre knows Aaron Rodgers a whole hell of a lot better than we do, and we're talking about it, right? Given our
we also didn't play on the Packers though. But Brett Favre seems to have an opinion about everything these days. So
well, Brett Favre doesn't believe that Aaron Rodgers will be back.
I think it's because Brett Favre, he also is like, it's just like my situation. It's just like my situation.
Right.
He wants it to be just like his situation. And then in Packer lore, Brett Favre won't look as bad looking back at history. It'd be like, see, they did it to Aaron Rodgers too, instead of Brett Favre just being this diva who held the team up and retired 50 times like he was Mick Foley in the Attitude Era or something. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is necessarily in the right either. I think the way that he's going about this is absolutely ridiculous. And what's even worse to me is
you gave him a glowing endorsement a few minutes ago.
But I do. I think Aaron Rodgers is acting like a crybaby. And what's even worse to me is the public perception on it immediately has gone to, well, the Packers haven't done enough. The Packers, it's all the Packers' fault. The franchise hasn't done enough to keep him and utilize his talents, blah, 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 blah. Well, just like 3 months ago, they were absolutely trashing Deshaun Watson, again, before all the other alleged things came out. But just as a player, not wanting to be a part of a dysfunctional organization any longer, saying, hey, I want out. I want to go somewhere else, and say, you are under contract. You didn't play out your contract. That's fine. You're man your word. Brett Favre especially said that. So it's crazy to me that all of a sudden now it's like, well, Aaron Rodgers has done everything that he can, and that franchise just hasn't it's nuts,
this
And
really
Aaron Rodgers is being a crybaby. I like, you know what? If you want out that bad, then go out, have another MVP season, and then allow this team to trade you to wherever you want to go, or play out your contract, go into free agency, and go sign for $45 million wherever you want. Let these people bring you in private jets and wine and dine you and give you the full Peyton Manning treatment. Get real.
Is this really like just about the personnel moves, or is this like a personal thing? Like, does he not like, he doesn't like the owner or the GM or whoever?
I
Is
think
this a
it's
He doesn't like
personality
he doesn't like the GM because he said if the guy supposedly he said if the GM isn't fired, he's not coming back. That's word on the street.
I mean, but
he's
is
reacting
that
as if the GM
because he disagrees with the moves, or is this like a personalities clash? You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's got to be a combination of both. Even if you disagree with some moves, I think that to be personal enough to be like, I want you unemployed,
right
is kind of it stems into personal. He's reacting as if this guy created the NBA play-in tournament for gosh sakes. I mean, like he's really coming after him, right? So
Well, you got to think he's also talking. Well, there's been reports allegedly that in a group chat he compared him to Jerry Krause, and everybody, especially due to the Michael Jordan docuseries, knows where and why and the hows and what's of that comment.
that's a whole nother stupid thing. It's like everybody trashes Jerry Krause,
and that was a personality thing, because you can't say like Krause made good moves.
Exactly.
So
it's one of the greatest dynasties in the history of sports.
Right. Personally, or he didn't respect.
He helped orchestrate, put together.
Yeah, but
I think Aaron Rodgers would be lucky to have Jerry Krause GMing the Packers.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. That's what I'm saying. Aaron Rodgers is trash, dude. The way that he's handled this entire situation is absolutely garbage. But did we not hear murmurs and rumors of discontent between him and the head coach all throughout the season as well? Issues of them not being necessarily on the same page in a lot of areas, and
It feels
Rodgers
like
maybe not liking him or whatever.
I recall that it was like when they brought in the head coach, they were like, "Oh, him and Rodgers might not get along. Is this going to work?" He's like this coach, and Rodgers is so experienced. But then when they were winning, everyone seemed like, "Oh, okay, well, they can work together. It's cool. Like, they've gotten used to each other, and like it's working." I didn't hear a lot of like, Rodgers doesn't like the coach talk anymore.
It feels like it's like because like Mike McCarthy, you always heard like the things of Aaron Rodgers and him maybe not meshing well, and like Mike McCarthy not being good enough to coach Aaron Rodgers. It feels like Mike McCarthy left and this other guy just came and like took his place, right? Like the new regime. I think the GM got there like 2018. So when was coach hired? His name is escaping.
Matt LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur. When was he hired? Was that 2019?
2 years ago, 2019.
Yeah, so I mean, he's just like taking McCarthy's place as like the punching bag, you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like, and I agree to some extent that the Packers maybe haven't done the exact correct moves in order to win a Super Bowl, and like maybe some coaching decisions were questionable. Like that field goal in the playoffs was absolutely stupid. I think we all agree now. It's like, what were they thinking? It even became like a thing on Jeopardy where the guy used it as his final Jeopardy answer when Rodgers was hosting. He was like, whose idea was it to kick that field goal? And Rodgers just goes, that's a good question. Like you can tell it grates on him, right? But at the same time, it's like they had chances in that game, and they've had chances in other games where the defense have gotten turnovers for them, and then they didn't do anything with the football. It's a team sport, right? And let's not act like the Packers are just like totally void of talent outside of Aaron Rodgers. Like it's not like we're the receiving core that he has to deal with. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, these guys suck. Like he's got Devontae Adams, he's got other playmakers, he's got a really good running back.
Adam Jones.
Yeah, the offensive line is good. The defense is much improved. Like I don't know what he expects to happen. Like maybe he's really just trying to flex his muscles to get the GM fired, because like if he gets traded, is he going to go to a team necessarily? I don't know what his contract says, by the way, if he's got a no trade clause where he could kind of pick and choose.
He does not.
Where he goes. So if he doesn't have the no trade clause, and for people who don't know, no trade clause isn't like you can't ever be traded. It's essentially you have to approve who you're being traded to, right? So like if he doesn't have a no trade clause, and they're like, let's say, give me a bad team right now who needs a quarterback off the top of your head. Let's say they swap him for the Texans for Deshaun Watson straight across.
Team. Oh yeah.
Let's say they start trading with the Texans straight across for Deshaun Watson, right? seems like a pretty fair trade. You get like one of the greatest quarterbacks ever for one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. Who's really young, like, and he goes to the Texans. Does he have a better chance of getting to the Super Bowl with the Texans?
Right.
The Packers?
Well, and that was
I don't
going to
think
be my
so.
next point. At what point do we like actually start blaming Aaron Rodgers? At what point do we stop blaming everybody and every dude? It's the same thing with the Russell Wilson argument.
It's the
At what point do we
common
stop blaming
denominator
the offensive
is
line and the coaching and all of that, and we start blaming the player? You know what I mean? It like every team has dynamic playmakers on it. And that's why the quarterback position is the highest paid and it's the absolute most important position on the field because it makes the biggest difference who's standing back there. And you know what? Some guys are winners and some guys aren't. Tom Brady's a winner. Guess what? Just like almost that exact same roster couldn't get anywhere with Jameis Winston. Yeah, you had a couple playmakers, but it's not like these are guys. Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski didn't step in and catch 20 and 30 touchdown passes this season. They were role players at best until they got into the playoffs, and even then they didn't play a majority of the snaps other than Rob in the Super Bowl. So my point being is that at what point do we stop blaming the coach and the play calling and the line and the lack of playmakers or this or that, the other thing, especially for these franchises like Green Bay that never have a lack of talent, and start saying, you know what, Aaron Rodgers, maybe you're just not good enough. Maybe despite the beautiful ball that you throw and all those numbers that you put up, you're just not a guy that can get it done at the absolute biggest stage, which is why despite your illustrious career, you've only been to one Super Bowl. Maybe that's just it. You just can't get it done.
Well, Austin, I don't know if you know, but he has won the Super Bowl, so we can't say he can't get it done because he's gotten it done technically. But I get your point. He deserves his fair share.
That he gets put on, dude.
I get it. Yeah, he deserves his fair share of the blame. But it's ultimately football is a team sport. I think quarterbacks. It's the old saying: they get way too much credit, they get way too much blame. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady was not the reason the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Green Bay Packers in that playoff game. The defense played out of its mind in the second half. Brady wasn't very good. What did he throw, like 3 picks or something like that? He was not very good. So, like,
guess what? He made the throws that counted.
Of course, you know what I mean? Like, you can argue that, like, if Jameis Winston was starting, maybe they lose the game. Who freaking knows, right? You can't, like, I hate it when people do the insert guy here into this situation and then try to replay the entire game as it went. It would be a completely different game or whatever. Or like if a play went differently or if a call went differently, right? You can't just like assume that everything else would have been the same. But to my point, though, it's like it's a team game. So like it's not just Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, it's like Aaron Rodgers is playing the most important position on the field. So therefore, it's kind of up to him to, like, I guess, be the captain of the ship, like you said. So he deserves some blame, but I don't think it's like he deserves all the blame for the Packers never getting back to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's fair at all.
I think he deserves far more than he gets, is my point.
Yeah. I hate that quarterback versus quarterback thing. Like people say, like, oh, like Patrick Mahomes beat Josh Allen or Tom Brady.
I saw you cringe when I said it.
I'm like, yeah, like they aren't even on the field at the same time. It's like not even like even in basketball, like it could be two guys play different positions. Like Steph Curry beat Joel Embiid or something. Like they hardly ever interact on the court, but they're going to interact some, right? In football with the quarterbacks, it's like they're never on the field at the same time, except afterwards when they're shaking hands. But it's like, this quarterback beat this quarterback. And I'm like, no, the quarterback faces the defense, right? Like, when the Saints and the Bucks play, Tom Brady isn't watching film of Drew Brees. He's watching film of like the Saints defense. But then we just, and I get like they're the, most marketed guys on the team. They're the face of the franchises and all that. But it's just like, that's annoying when people, just because you brought that up,
the only way you could really measure that accurately is if you had them play the exact same defense. You know what I mean?
Right,
and the exact if you had robots of every guy and they had the exact same skills, they play the exact same defense, then you could say so and so beat so and so. It'd be like a competition. It'd be like playing fourth or something. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's dumb. It's always the Buccaneers beat the Packers. It's not Tom Brady beat Aaron Rodgers, and I agree that annoys me too.
Well, yeah, like the whole Eli Manning's beaten Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl, and I'm like, it wasn't like just Eli Manning. That's not how it went. You know,
Nah, bro. Eli was playing safety in that game. He was picking
Absolutely.
Brady off.
Eli's mere presence was the
He
only
was
reason
lining
that
up an
Tom
edge
Brady couldn't
rusher.
Get it done.
Eli was lining up an edge rusher, dude, and just killing Tom.
and when Eli comes up for his Hall of Fame candidacy, that's absolutely going to be something people are used to argue for him. Well, he beat Tom Brady twice in the Super. Not he beat the Patriots. Not he beat the Patriots. Not he beat Bill Belichick. Not he beat the defense. It's going to be Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl.
And I think to your point, it even lessens. It's even like feels like a lesser thing because I think it's more important that he defeated the undefeated New England Patriots, not that he beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
But that
historically, what seems greater, beating Tom Brady in a game or beating the undefeated New England Patriots at the biggest game? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that whole team was a juggernaut, which that's why that performance was so impressive. But it's gonna just get the way that people talk now. It's just gonna get broken down to like, oh, he faced Brady, 1-on-1 and he beat him like it was, Jordan versus Bird on Sega Genesis or something. Like
speaking of Brady, real quick, and we're gonna move on here in a sec. But did you see Brady said that he admitted that he would give up 2 Super Bowls in exchange for the to have the undefeated season have been successful? I wonder. He said no, he didn't say which 2, but I mean. It doesn't matter. I don't think. I mean, maybe keep the Falcons one just because that was so ridiculous.
He's like, that Eagles one was like,
he didn't Rams one.
He didn't beat the Eagles or the Eagles against McNabb. You're saying, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. But like, I wonder how many Super Bowls he would give up for that. Like, can we get where the line is drawn? Would he give up 3?
Right.
Would he give up 4? Maybe because if you're undefeated. In the modern era, that's the greatest team of all time.
Right.
You know what I mean? The Miami Dolphins, like, they can throw that champagne at the garbage, brother.
He was the MVP that season, too. So he would have been the greatest player on the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, and he broke, like, all kinds of records. Him and Moss broke the connection touchdown record. Yep. Like, they were unstoppable.
Moss broke single season receiving touchdowns. He broke single season passing.
And they were running the score up on everybody too.
Right, not even caring.
They were like dropping 52 points on the Jaguars and stuff. They're like, we're only up by 30. Keep scoring. So, and then they get to the Super Bowl and they score 14 points versus the New York Giants, who everybody thought was mediocre, and they lose. Like it's got to eat at Tom and Bill alive, I think, still.
Oh, I bet.
We talked about this a few weeks ago with Gonzaga. It's like, you had this chance for this historic season that only, one other team has done before. And, you can not just win a championship, but like go down in history. And, we saw what happened against Baylor.
I think it's a little different with basketball, though, because other people have done it. No one's done it in the 17-game season of the NFL.
It's been done, like, the Dolphins. It's been the undefeated.
Yeah, but so many people like cherry pick that one too. They're like, well, the competition one isn't great because it's back in the day and all that kind of stuff. People compare modern sports to sports back in the day.
They still pop that champagne though.
Yeah, I know they do.
Every time.
Can't take it away from Larry Zonka, man. Getting his buzz on once a year.
That's their thing, though. That's their thing. Like,
Austin rolling his eyes. Do you hate that, Austin? I think it's kind of lame myself.
I think it's so petty, dude.
I think it's lame to root against teams in the modern day. Like that to me is lame. Like, can you imagine if I don't know, give me a record, like a points record, right? Like, let's say LeBron goes and breaks Kareem's points record. Wouldn't it be lame if Kareem was like, I hope he doesn't do it. I hope he sprains his ankle in the last game and doesn't get it. And I've got drinks ready to go around for the whole team when he fails. How petty would he look?
Hey, all I could think of was Larry Zonka the year that the Patriots were about to go undefeated, watching that Super Bowl in his basement, like with all the lights off, like a drink in his hand. Like,
no friends over whatsoever.
Crazy, like, come on,
How much do you think Larry Zonka popped on that Eli scramble play where he threw it up to David Tyree and he caught it with his tail? Larry Zonka was probably cheering harder than any player on the Giants sideline. That's what I'm talking about! I don't know any of these guys! eyes.
But like somebody like Kareem, it's like he's got all these other accomplishments, and so it's kind of like, damn, I lost a scoring record. But I think with those 72 Dolphins, like a lot of them, like that's their only thing. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
it.
That's a good point.
that
That's a
is
good point.
That is their one claim to fame. Like I wouldn't know who Mercury Morris is if it wasn't for the 72 Dolphins, right? Like that's why he became as famous as he did, because he was on that. And so he even became more famous after his playing career because he was like the main one, you know, talking all that smack about them. And so yeah, when that record goes away, like that's it for him, you know, as opposed to you know, like Brady, you know, someone like, you know, if he's got some, you know, unbreakable record that gets broken, he's got all this other stuff. He's just like, oh well, I lost that. I'm still good.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Kareem does have other records. He's got championships and all that, but I think the scoring record is a big deal. It should be.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's not as big a deal as it should be, but I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, it is. But he's got, you know, 6 championships, and you know, I mean, he's got, you know, undefeated seasons in college. He's got,
and you can guarantee if LeBron were to be close to the scoring record, oh my goodness, the coverage ESPN would have on.
When he gets close to it. Oh yeah.
Nick Wright will just be coming over to all our houses to tell us about it. Like,
right.
He's just banging on my window in the middle of the night. Hey, did you see LeBron's only 100 points away?
No, what if it's not?
No, thanks to Kevin Love.
Because we've seen this like in college sometimes where, you know, someone's going to break a record and like they got hurt or something, right? And so they kind of manufacture the moment. Like I remember famously, it was a girl at UConn, I think, and she was like, you know, 2 points away from breaking the all-time school record, and then she like tore her knee up, and so they had her go out there in the next game, and like they had her stand under the basket. They did tip off, and they just threw her the ball and let her do a layup.
Yeah, like the thing on King of the Hill. They did on the King of the Hill where Bill Dotrieve's touchdown record got broken. Remember?
Can you imagine if like, you know, like LeBron's like 1 bucket away from beating Kareem and he like gets hurt or something, and they let him do, and they set it up to where everyone like agrees to like let him score so he can.
Dude, you know what would happen is right as LeBron, and is like he'd have like the full leg cast because he like, let's say he just tore his patella tendon, right? He's got the full leg cast on crutches, and he's about with one hand. He's about to go. Skip Bayless out of nowhere just swats the oblivion out of the ball and gives him the Mutombo.
Bayless comes through with like the Tanya Harding and like cracks his other knee. It's just like no, this isn't gonna happen. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, now. The media coverage of that would be like insane. And I think if it's like high school or college, people are kind of like, oh, like that was a nice moment. That was cool. But
right. And the players are like,
I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that for breaking a record. I don't think that, you know,
but you
know, maybe I'm insensitive. I like the thing where they do where like the sick kid, you know, they give him a moment on the field kind of thing. I think that's cool. But I think if it's a record, it seems disingenuous at that point, you know,
because the
players
not fair. Who set the record, they didn't have that. You know what I'm
saying? They didn't get that opportunity to have a point or a basket or touchdown handed to them.
Points after I got hurt, right? Like they said it in, you know, legit like competition, right? So yeah, to like let someone break their record in kind of this like a fake moment, I get that. And then but what they'll say is like, well, you know, we asked the player who had the record and, you know, she was okay with it. But I'm like, what are you gonna say? Because if you were like, no, I'm not gonna
say no, then you're just like a jerk,
right?
Oh, it's you're a bitter old person. That's it. And they would just go ahead and do it anyways.
But that works for everybody except for those 72 Dolphins. No, I never see enough people complaining that they are bitter old men.
Right. With when Jerry Rice went to the Seahawks, I remember, and he wanted to wear number 80, and it was like, well, he asked Steve Largent, right, if he could wear his number, and I'm like, what's Steve Largent going to look like if he says no? People are going to say he's petty and like, you know, why do you care? It's just a number. So it's like he kind of has to say, oh, yeah, can
you imagine if Largent was like, you better get used to 81, brother?
So you put that person in like a bad position to even ask. So yeah, like I don't, you know, I'm not a fan.
It's nice that Jerry at least asked though. You know, I mean, you're right. Like, what is Largent going to say? He's kind of got to say yes, but it's nice that he wasn't just like, hey, I'm just going to wear it. That guy doesn't play no more. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or ask the team.
That would be fun.
But
didn't just like, no.
Like, right.
Yeah. Number? No. Sorry.
He's like, yeah, I'm really not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Or what was the thing on the Colts where like Carson Wentz was coming over and the like receiver?
Yeah,
It was kind of like a lower level receiver, right? Like
He's like
not
a third string.
he's like a rookie or something.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not giving my number up. No, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, who's this guy? Like, just. Anyways, moving on. I know, Amaar, you have a segment lined up for us. Is that correct? For after our break here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. We don't have any sponsors, but we're going to hear from somebody. And when we come back, Amar's got a segment. He's going to lay down on you. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Enjoying triple overtime? Do you like hearing about professional wrestling as well? Well, then we have the show for you. From the makers of Triple Overtime as part of the Dill Industries worldwide YouTube channel comes May I Take This Bump? Tag team partners Dillon Divine and Matt Ecstatic relive their glory days and talk about the latest dealings in professional wrestling.
It's been a while. I've been sitting on this for about a month, but I want to talk about it, so I'm going to talk about it. When Baylor smacked Gonzaga in college basketball's national title game, there was all this talk. The narrative was that Gonzaga just wasn't ready for Baylor's strength and athleticism, and they just hadn't seen this kind of size, and basically they got out athleted. And that was an element of it, right? But what people didn't talk about enough is like Baylor played a great basketball game. They played a smart basketball game. They shot the ball really well. Like, it wasn't just athleticism, size, strength, and gifts. It was skill and strategy that they just simply outplayed Gonzaga. And the bigger picture of that is we see this a lot in sports when it comes to minority athletes, Black athletes in particular, is everyone is quick to praise, their athleticism, speed, strength, the God-given gifts, right? And they don't give them as much credit for the skill. They don't give them as much credit for the IQ, the things that, you kind of have to work on and that you're not necessarily blessed with, right? And the things that, are more up here than, your legs and your arms, right? We see this in the NFL. You look at someone like Lamar Jackson, right? Gets all the credit in the world for being athletic and fast, does not get enough credit for being a smart quarterback who, makes accurate throws, right? You see in the NBA, you see Zion Williamson, Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, all the credit in the world for being amazing athletes, for being strong, for jumping high, not enough credit for having skill, not enough credit for their decision-making. You see this in, soccer, baseball, combat sports, like all over the place. Black athletes are hyped as these great athletic specimens, and people are slow to come around with, their sports IQ. Some people are slow to come around to give them credit for the things that they do that make the difference between just an amazingly gifted athlete, because there's a ton of those in the world, but not all of them succeed at an elite level, right? Not all of them win Super Bowls and NBA championships. And the difference between them is that they're not just great athletes, but like they are great competitors, they're great players, they're great thinkers. We saw a little bit of this come up in the NFL draft recently, right? A lot of talk around Justin Fields, slipping down some draft boards, not getting enough credit because there is a stereotype coming in that, he's a great athlete, he's very gifted, but, is he a leader? Is he, does he have like the mental part of the game down? You might even argue that was something behind the whole thing. We've seen Deion Sanders talk recently about how there were no HBCU players drafted, right? How many of those players got scouted as, great athlete, not a great player? And how much of that was inaccurate, right? It's just one of those things like, you might call it like a microaggression, or just, one of those things that people are just slow to come around with in this society in which, racism is still a thing. Negative stereotypes are still a thing. Sports are supposed to be the best meritocracy where none of that matters, but it still matters. It still factors in. Still an issue, still has to be overcome. And, although it's 2021 and we're making progress, not all the way there yet. And that was just I saw more examples of it coming out of that national title game, also in the NFL draft. And you're going to see it throughout the sports calendar. It's just something that happens. It sucks. One day, I hope we get over it. But I don't know when that's going to be. So,
All right, and we are back, everybody. Thank you so much. You are a triple OG. Mwah. That's my that if I decided that if I was ever an NBA player who hit a three, that I'd be the mwah, like the chef's kiss, but that's my 3-point sign, right? Anyways, we are gonna go into our final thoughts here. Say goodnight. So what do you got, Dylan? What do you got for your final thought of the?
My final thought is that Austin really does not like Aaron Rodgers as a person. And that means, as it usually does, we're never getting Aaron Rodgers on the show. Thanks a lot, Austin.
What do you got, Amaar?
I watched during the draft, and when Trey Lance came up for San Francisco, there was a lot of talk that he was like the most unique player or the most fascinating player that people had ever seen. I think that was kind of Mel Kiper's buzz, was like the most fascinating or unique prospect he's ever seen. I just wondered like why that was. It's just weird because it's like I've watched so much football, and Mel Kiper's watched way more football than I have, that like the fact that something surprises him like that anymore, I felt that to be like kind of incredible. And it made me want to watch Trey Lance now. So I'm like, I want to see this, right?
Did he mean on the
yeah.
field, or did he mean like personality off the field?
He was like the most fascinating prospect he'd seen. I was just like, why, like is that
Maybe just because he's played like 17
something
Division
like
II games or something like that.
Yeah,
and you're right about Mel Kiper watching more football than you. He's watched more football than anyone on the planet. I'm
Without
convinced.
a doubt.
Yeah,
but it made me like, oh, I want to see this. Like, I want to see this now. Like, I'm like intrigued, And usually, from the draft, I don't get that. 'Cause I usually, know who a lot of players are. But yeah, that stuck out to me. And now it's like, I'm circling like Niners games on the calendar next year because I'm like, I want to see this like fascinating, amazing prospect. Or he's not even better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Who knows?
And my final thought of the week is Aaron Rodgers is a literal garbage human being. Terrible, terrible person. He's awful. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of Triple OT. As always, I'm Austin with Dylan, with Amaar. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, drop a comment, join the conversation. Have a good night. Peace.